now. It should be live. Well, setting up your meeting for Facebook Live. Let's see here. Thanks for your patience, the folks that are on the phone. Appreciate it. Live on Facebook. Okay. For those of you on Facebook, I can't watch the live and do the questions at once, so I'll try to look over there. I'm trying to follow this chat and all that stuff at the same time.
You're good on Facebook.
I'm good on Facebook. Okay. I have the chat box open if you guys have questions about what you want to do or about what we talk about tonight or about what's hard. Tonight is going to be a little more on the spiritual side of things. I was sharing with my couples Bible study just a few minutes ago, and my husband was like, do people know you're going to talk about God tonight? I was like, I think people know I talk about God. So we're going to talk about God tonight, or faith, or the things that, get us through tough times. So we're going to, do you want to stop, cancel? It should be recording. Okay, so we're going to try this. Thanks for joining me for our third live discussion. And if you don't want to be on live and you don't want to discuss, that's okay. If you do, you can pop on, and at the bottom of the screen, there's a place for you to be on video or to be on audio and ask questions when it's time. If you just want to type them in the chat box, that's okay too, because the reason I did this was to just help people have a place where they could be social if they wanted. This is my new mantra is physical distancing, but social connecting. So, and if that's not what you want, that's okay. If you're on via Facebook Live, pop some questions in the chat box, or the chat box in the comments, chat box on Zoom, comments on Facebook Live, and we are going to dive in because I wanted to share with you some things. So I don't know if many of you know this, but last year was probably one of the tougher years for me, being sick and really wrestling with waiting for God in an uncertain time. And so I'm kind of was joking with some friends of mine that I've been doing this social isolation thing for the last 2 months because I had to just be social isolated so I didn't get the flu. Doesn't even matter why. The doctors asked me in January or in end of January, please be isolated so that you don't get the flu. And so I've kind of been practicing this alone thing a bit. And my husband and I live in an RV tiny house. So we do this social, physical distancing from the world, lots of time together in a tiny little space. It'll be going on 3 years now. And so not only do I have some mental, emotional, physical experience with all this, well, that's not how I want to say it. I've thought a lot about what I'm going to talk about tonight. I have experience in this personally, not just with my clients, not just lip service, but from my own personal life and my own personal experience. I have lived through this, not this coronavirus, but a level of uncertainty, a level of struggle, a level of pain, a level of trauma. So I really get it. And what I'm going to talk about tonight is not because I just learned it from a book. It's really because I've lived it. One of the things, my friend Sarah Beckman wrote a book called Hope in Hard Places, and she invited me to write the foreword for it. If you need some good advice, pick up this book, Hope in Hard Places by Sarah Beckman. And in the foreword, I tell the story that I share when I speak about resilience or dealing with hard things. And I talk about how it was Christmas season, about 4 days before Christmas, and this was almost 18 years ago now. I remember walking into the sanctuary, and what I really remember very vividly is the smell of the sanctuary, that fir, the balsam fir, the evergreen candles, it just smelled like Christmas, and it just made me so happy and to be in a place at Christmas time that smelled like Christmas. My whole family kind of filed into our pew, and the pastor started talking about struggle and difficulties and our perspective in those times. And he used the story of George Bailey from the movie It's a Wonderful Life. And I'm going to give you the short version, but basically at one point he's like, it doesn't matter if you struggled with, cancer or the death of a child, loss of a parent, abuse, harm, life-threatening illness. He went on to list 8 or 10 things, I think 10 things that you could have struggled through or had to deal with. It could have really wanted you to give up on life, like George Bailey. His at that point was a financial crisis. And I remember looking at John at one point, and as the pastor talked about how even if you'd been through these hard things, you could still shift your perspective and see what a wonderful life you had. Because when George Bailey kind of met with the angel Clarence, it wasn't his circumstances that changed, it was his perspective that changed. And I remember looking at John with tears in my eyes and saying to him, we have such a wonderful life. And in that moment, kind of as I'm having this sweet moment with my husband, I felt my teenage daughter elbow me in the side, and she looks at me and she goes, Mom, 8 of those 10 things have happened to you. Not us, you. how can you say it's a wonderful life? How can you have faith in God? And I was trying to behave in church. And so I leaned over and said, we'll talk about this later. And when we got home, she had some really good questions for me as a teenager who believed in God, who was walking with God, but who didn't understand a God that allows there to be hard times, and how you have a faith and a trust in hard times. And I hate to tell you, I don't have a lot of answers about why God does what he does or why God allows what he allows. But what I do know is that hope and faith and trust in God in the hard times is what gets us through. And so one of the things that, if you've known me for long, you know that I'm the how girl. Well, that sounds great, but how, Susie? Tell me how to do that. And so as I was thinking about this today and talking with a few friends and a few clients, one of the things that came up was this idea of the volatility. We're all on this roller coaster. Sometimes we're feeling, hopeful and good, and we have enough toilet paper and food, and our kids are playing well, and then we hit this slope where we hear of more cases, or a friend is struggling, or we have another personal crisis in our life of a whole nother sort, maybe a marriage, maybe financial, maybe my mother-in-law is very ill and will probably die in the next 24 hours because she's been dying from congestive heart failure, but we got the news this morning that it'll probably happen in the next 24 hours. And so there's all these other emotions that we're having. And on top of that, we're turning on the TV and they're saying, coronavirus is spreading and so-and-so's not isolating, and if such and such would happen. And it's just a powder keg for anxiety, depression, hopelessness, sorrow, tears, all the feels. And it does feel like a roller coaster, kind of volatility and vulnerability. And we feel out of control, not just of our world, but of ourselves. And I know for me, in those times when I feel that out of control, the only place I find peace is in my relationship with God. I don't know why I'm getting all emotional here, except for this has been a hard fought lesson for me. And so as I was thinking about our time tonight and really kind of asking God what I should share, I felt like God gave me this kind of threefold framework. And I don't say that to be over spiritual. I just say, hey, this is like, how do I help people learn to trust God in the panic? And what came to me were these few things. And I hope they help you as you walk away from tonight, just with a sense of not just, oh, yes, I should trust, but how do I trust? How do I trust God and find peace when everything in me wants to panic? That's really what I want to talk about. And so the first thing I want to talk about is this idea of telling God. And I love the Psalms. If you are if you have ever read the Bible, the Psalms are one of my favorite books because David is as real can be. And he tells God all the things he thinks, whatever they are, not even polished. Like, why are you leaving me alone, God? How long are you going to not show up, God? Can you crush my enemies, God? I'm thirsty and tears are my only constant companion, God. And he tells God all the things that we're so afraid to tell God because we think they're ugly or they're not polished up right. And they're not what we're supposed to say as good, believing people. And David says all of them, and God in the Psalms, and God calls the Psalms a book of worship. So as I began thinking about that, I was like, it's worship to talk to God about how I think and feel. And sure enough, right smack in the middle of the Psalms, there's a verse in Psalm 62, and it says, pour out your heart before me. Oh, people, pour out your heart before me. Trust in him. God is our refuge and our help in time of need. And I thought, okay, so trusting God means pouring out my heart before him. All right, well, I can do that. But what I love about what David does at the end of every time he tells God exactly what he thinks, no matter what David feels, every psalm that has this kind of tirade ends with some version, and this is my Susie version, like there's the Message version, which is a really good version, is you are God and I am not, and so I will trust you. And I love that because it says to me that trust is not a feeling. Trust is a willful assent. It's a position that I take when I realize I can spew out and pour out my heart before God. But what I've got to do at the end of the day is believe that God is God and I am not, even though I try to be in control of things sometimes. I've had people say to me, you're not the Holy Spirit, Susie. I've tried to control and tell people what I think they should do. But at the end of the day, God is God and I am not. And that's enough to know that truth and to know that pouring out my heart before God is actually trusting God. That's a way we trust. We tell God what we think, what we feel, what we wish, what we don't like, what we hope for, all the feels. God says, tell them to me, pour them out before me, because I call that worship. And I was like, okay, that kind of worship I can do, especially right now when I have so many thoughts and feelings, because at the end of the time, been in relationship with God. And I think that's why God says it. Just come to me, reason with me, tell me what you think and feel, because that's what I want more than anything is a relationship with you. We can sometimes put God in this faraway box. So tell God all the things. The first way to move from panic to peace is to tell God all the things. Okay. And he calls that worship. And he says that's a form of the way we trust him, by pouring out our heart before him. The second thing I want to talk to you about is what I would say is take in God's love for you. Take in God's love for you after you've poured out your heart, to take in God's love for you. And in one of my favorite verses, it's in Psalm 46:10, and it says, "Be still and know that I am God." And if you know anything about me, I'm not a real still person. I talk with my hands. I live big. I sit in the back of church. When I used to go to church, we're on the road now. So even when we go to church now, even if we don't know anybody, I still sit in the back of church because I move around all the time. So be still is a really interesting concept for me. Be still on the outside, be still on the inside. And be still actually means, in the Hebrew language, cease striving. So just pause with that for a minute. Cease striving. It's also been translated let go. Cease striving and know with your mindset, even if you don't feel it in your heart, but choose to know that I am God. And I think that even that I am is a very present moment. Like, I am here with you in this, in the midst of whatever you're going through, whatever's going on. Cease striving and know that I am God. I am right here in the midst of this with you. And so whatever that hassle is, whatever that fear is, sink into that moment and cease striving. Just, sometimes I'll do this. Okay, cease striving and be still. Whatever that stillness can look like in the moment, after you've poured out your heart, cease striving and take in this reality that I am God. And I want to take that one step forward, one step more, deeper. I don't know the word deeper, because that's a willful assent of pausing. But another one of my favorite verses is in Zephaniah. And when I think about God and his love for me, I learned more about what that meant being a mom than any other place. But if you have fur people in your life, you get it too, because you love something so unreasonably outside of yourself. And so we love in a way that's very lavish, in a way that delights in a way that takes care of, and just kind of muses at these, I had a FaceTime with my grandson the other day, and was just delighted. His hair was sticking up and waffles were in it, and he was baby babbling, and my heart was just so full. I just was so delighted in him. And there's a verse in Zephaniah, this little book of prophets, that says, the Lord is with you, a mighty warrior to save. He will take great delight in you. He will quiet you with his love. He will rejoice over you with singing. And I just think about that, that taking in that love for God, that God has for us, that he rejoices over us, that he delights in us. And if we can take that in the moment, it kind of calms us down and lets us be at peace with being loved. And I think that that's just a really important place. And the thing to know about this little verse is it came in a time when God's people were in a mess. They were in a foreign land with foreign rulers. They had no control over their life. Does that sound a little familiar? I mean, we're not in a foreign land, but it seems like a little bit of a foreign country right now, where we can't go anywhere or do anything. We have no control over this coronavirus thing, and maybe not over a lot of things that are happening as a result of it. So that little verse came right in the middle of that time. And I think it's a time for us now where God says, I see you, I delight in you, I'll quiet you. And so I want to leave that with you as you take in God's love for you. And then the third way that we trust God in the midst is literally to choose to trust God. It is a willful choice. I cannot tell you how many times I have said the words, I trust you, Jesus, out of willful obedience when my feelings are as far away as over there. Like, I don't feel anything. Last year, there was a time when I was so sick, I was coughing up this junk that had settled in my lungs, and I thought I literally was going to choke and die. I don't say that to be dramatic, but I remember thinking this could be it. And as I'm coughing up in my head, in my mind, I was thinking, I trust you, Jesus. I trust you, Jesus. I want to live a long life. I got lots to do. I got a brand new grandbaby. I got a husband I love and kids and a ministry and people I want to talk to. But I trust you, Jesus. And it was a very willful choice to say those words because my feelings were not anywhere close to them. And I think we forget that trusting and choosing to trust God is about a choice. It's a choice in the moment to say, I trust you. And I don't even know what that means sometimes, except for that I'm going to let go and trust you. And one of the ways we do that is to what's called take our thoughts captive to God, to Christ. In 2 Corinthians, there's a verse where it talks about taking your thoughts captive to Christ. And I was thinking about like, okay, how do you explain how to do that? And what I came up with was this idea of a bunch of balloons. And there was this time when our daughter, Emily, she was turning 16, and I had gone to the store and I'd gotten a bunch of balloons, you know, not just the Mylar ones, but the bundle that comes with all the teens and the helium ones, that's the word. And I put them in the back of my van, I seatbelted them in, I secured the knot, and I drove on home. And when I parked in my driveway, I opened up the side door of the van and they started flying out everywhere. And I'm grabbing balloon strings as fast as I can to grab this bundle and capture this bundle of balloons. So I had some balloons for our daughter's birthday. And that was the image that came to me when I thought about taking thoughts captive to Christ. Sometimes I want to take the bundle of balloons, the bundle of thoughts, and just give them to God and go, here, you got to carry these. I got no idea what to do with these. Sometimes a random thought will come up and I grab it back and go, you know, I can't handle this right now. I don't know what to do with this right now. So here, God, you've got to hold it. You've got to take care of it. Sometimes I can grab a thought and be like, this is a lie. This is based on fear. This isn't based on what God says that's true, or this is based on my imagination running away with me, because it can do that too. Sometimes in really good ways, sometimes in not so good ways. And so taking that captive and saying to God, I don't know what to do with this bundle of thoughts, so I'm giving them to you. I'm literally giving them to you. And I think if you can imagine that and literally picture that, and then letting go, opening up your hands and letting God handle them, because that's what he says to do. And that word captive in the Greek, it really means to take prisoner, which means once you give it up, you don't get it back. So you're going to give it to God, you're going to let him handle it, let him carry it, and you're not going to take it back. And that is something that really helps us take our worrisome roller coaster, panicky thoughts and give them to God. The last thing I want to tell you is about a willful choice. And this is another one of my favorite verses. There's a story in the Gospel of Mark where this father comes to Jesus, and his son is possessed with demons, and he wants them to be healed. And the disciples have tried to heal and nothing happens. And, you know, this father looks at Jesus and says, you know, can you heal my son? And Jesus says, well, anything's possible if you believe. If you believe, it's possible for your son to be healed. And I love this father's honesty, because I think I would have gone, oh yeah, I believe 110% Jesus, heal my baby right now. That would have been me. But this father looks at Jesus and says, Lord, I believe, help me in my unbelief. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that honesty. And Jesus, I could just picture him smiling, looking at dad, kind of nodding, because he knew it anyway. I mean, God knows our unbelief anyway, and he heals his son. And I think why I love that verse so much, one of many reasons, is the honesty that says, trust can mean I choose to say I trust, and I can give you all the feels at the same time. And so when we come to God in this place of trusting God, so we have peace and not panic, we're able to say, I'm trusting you. It's almost like with all my work, I'm trusting you. You know, I don't have all the feels, and that's okay. But I do trust you because I choose to trust you, because you say to trust you. And I'm trusting you by pouring out my heart before you, by coming to you and receiving what you say about me, and trusting you with a willful assent in the moment that says, I'm not in control. I'm not in control of a lot of things, but I am in control of what I choose to dwell on, what I choose to let take up space in my mind, what I choose to do with my feelings, and what I choose to do with them is give them all to you and trust you, Jesus. And so one of the things that I have done, as I told you last year, that idea when I was so sick, was this mantra of I trust you, Jesus. And sometimes when things are so overwhelming and I can't capture the thought and I don't know what to do with all the feelings, I just picture that bunch of balloons and giving them to God. Or, you know, I sometimes think dumping my box and just like, here, you got to handle all this because I can't. What I say to myself in those moments is, I trust you, Jesus. And just that willful assent helps bring us peace of calm, helps bring a spirit of rest, because one of the things God promises is that he'll keep us in perfect peace. He'll keep us peaceful and not in panic when we keep our minds and thoughts stayed on him, because we choose to trust in him. So it's kind of this whole circle of how do we trust? Well, we trust by telling and pouring and taking in and trusting. And so I hope that helps you in this peace or panic when you feel that roller coaster ride, because sometimes we can't get off it. Sometimes we just have to ride it out, hold on to that handlebar for dear life, and just say, I trust you, Jesus. So those are some thoughts about how to move from panic to peace. Tell God exactly what you think. He knows it anyway. Tell him what you feel. Take in God's love for you, because That is what's going to ground you. And then choose to willfully trust, to name your trust. Be like the dad who said, I trust you. Help me. Lord, I believe. Help me in my unbelief. So I hope that full circle gives you a little bit of tools to get you to a place where you find a little bit more peace. If you use them this week, email me, message me, let me know how I can be in this with you. My email is susiemillercoaching@gmail.com. You can connect with me there. I'm going to open up for questions now. If you have any, let me go to the chat box. All right, here we go. And we're going to go for 9 or 10 more minutes, because I really want to honor you guys that it's a 30-minute little respite, hopefully, in the midst of your day. And I'm going to grab over here to Facebook and see if people have. Okay. You are God and I am not. Yes, ma'am. Anne Marie, that is my mantra when my feelings are nowhere near what my mindset says. Okay, here's a question right here. Let me read this question. All right. Yeah. What do I do when my feelings are so far from what you're telling me my mind should think? That's such a sweet question. And I live right there. Let me tell you the first thing. You shouldn't, don't should all over yourself. When you have these moments of I should feel, I should think, I should be, I want you to hear my voice in your head. Susie said, don't should all over yourself, because that's not going to help anybody. Shoulda, woulda, couldas never are good. What you can do is say, what do I want to do? Who do I want to be in this moment? And honestly, friends, there have been moments when that is how I live, moment to moment to moment, where what I feel doesn't get to govern me. And I go back to the first thing I told you. Tell God, I don't feel like trusting you. I'm not feeling safe. I'm not feeling at peace. I'm feeling panic. I'm worried about blah, 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 blah. Tell it all. Sometimes it helps me to write it down in a journal just to get it out of my head. This is why I love what David did, because he said to God all this stuff, and he took his feelings, gave them to God. And then what makes us different is our ability to have control of our minds, our mindset. I'm choosing to trust. And that's where that mantra comes in for me. Excuse me, where I can just say, I trust you, Jesus. That is not a feeling for me more often than it's a willful assent. It is just a choice to say, I choose to trust that you are God and I am not. I choose to trust you in the midst of this moment. So I don't think the feelings have to line up for us to be trusting children of God. I think there's times with our kids we're like, you gotta just trust me. I know bigger than you. And they don't like it, but they're going to have to kind of lean in because we have authority over them. So I hope that helps. Another question. Okay, how do you stay in that place of surrender? Oh my goodness, one moment at a time. I am, if you know anything about the Enneagram, I am an 8 on the Enneagram. I am a D on the disc. I am all things full speed ahead, in control, make it happen kind of girl. Surrender is not my middle name. There's a hymn called I Surrender All. My version is I Surrender Some, because I'm always in that tug of war with surrender. So how do I stay surrendered? Sometimes, actually, it is really moment by moment. It is this understanding and literally talking myself into, who do I want to be? I want to be a woman who trusts God. I want to be a woman who brings peace. How do I do that? Well, if I don't have any in me, I can't give any. And so it's almost like an exercise. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like a muscle I've had to build. And maybe I'm on the long, slow, flatten the curve learning curve. If there's anybody who's on a flat curve of learning, I'm not a quick learner in this realm. I am on the surrender, the slow lessons, because I struggle with surrender. I think we all do. And that's when I go back to David, where I think what helps me surrender the most is I'm brutally honest with God. I tell God exactly how I feel a lot. There's this great movie, Fiddler on the Roof. If you haven't seen it, it's an old movie, grab it on Netflix. And it's set in this Jewish town in Russia back in the time of the Tsars. And the main character is a devout Jewish father, and he's a milkman delivering to the village. And he's headed home on the Sabbath as the movie opens. He's headed home on the Sabbath after delivering milk, and he's trying to get all his milk delivered, because in the Jewish times you had to be home and ceased work by Friday at sundown. And the movie opens with he's got kind of this rope over his shoulder with the milk cart behind him and the horse behind the milk cart. And he's looking up at the sky and he's going, God, did you really have to make my horse lame on the Sabbath? And it begins this whole movie of dialogue with God, where he's just telling God what he thinks and feels, good, bad, and different. And I think that is surrender in action, because God says, pour out your heart before me. And I'm like, all right, I'll take you seriously. And that's how I stay in that place of surrender. So I hope that answers your question. All right, there's another one. Let me read this. How do I stop the tears? Oh my gosh, I'm reading this. Then it brings tears to my eyes. Sharon said it for everyone, so it's not a secret. How do I stop the tears over the sadness of the reality of what my future holds? I trust him with all my heart, but I'm sad about what may happen to my business, something I've put all my life into building. The emotions are holding me back from thinking clearly and about what next steps to take. So first of all, I'm sorry. I get that. The travel industry's taken a huge hit. And so let's pray for our friends in the travel industry. I think a lot of businesses are really taking huge hits. Reality sucks. Sometimes reality sucks. And I think, again, I'm going to go back to, that's why I love David. His reality sucked a lot. And so I would say, in a very gentle and gracious way, if you were with me, Sharon, I'd look at you and I'd say, take some time to turn off your brain and take care of yourself. Maybe for an hour, maybe for 3 hours, maybe for a whole day, if you can, because nothing's going to change in that short amount of time. Let's take 2 hours where you're going to stop. And I've gotten in the shower and told God everything I thought loudly, so my kiddos didn't hear me. I've journaled. I've written down all my thoughts and burned them to let God know they're an offering to him. Because I think what happens is we're in this tension of trusting God to take care of us. And sometimes the way he takes care of us isn't the way we want him to. Like, I've prayed for years to be well. God taking care of me and God answering my prayers isn't me being well. And I've had to explain to my kids that sometimes trusting God doesn't mean we get the answers we want. And so the feelings in this moment for you are really real. And I think I want to invite you to say, reality sucks, people. My reality right now is really hard. And that doesn't mean I don't have faith. That doesn't mean I don't trust God. But I'm scared and I don't know what to do. And I don't know what my future holds. But I know who holds my future. And I don't mean that as a cliche. I really don't. I mean that as whatever comes, you're not going to be alone in it. I'm going to pray that God gives you some good ideas for how to transition some of this tragedy into something good for your business. I know there's a lot of people online talking about how to do that, and I'm not the expert. I got to get a tissue here, excuse me, because you're not supposed to touch your face. Normally, I just wipe my nose with my hand, but you're not supposed to touch your face. I would just invite you to be honest. She said, I laughed, my place of shower, in the shower, my place of worship. I would really invite you to read the Psalms. Again, I'm not a Bible Band-Aid girl, because I think people just plaster Band-Aid Bible verses on people and tell them to think about it this way. I think you just be really raw. But in the Psalms, I found David often in a place where you're talking about, where his reality sucks. And he goes to God and he finds solace and sustenance and strength in that place of utter reality sucks. So that is not a fun answer. That's probably not a clickbait or sellable answer, but that's my answer to you. It just sucks, and I'm sorry. And sometimes in those places, we just have to be with the Lord in it. And I think that's where we are like the dad. Lord, I believe, help me in my unbelief. So thanks for that question. All right, let's see if there's any other questions here we got. All right, this is on everyone. No one is alone. Part of. Sorry, I'm trying to read Facebook. I'm trying to be kind to both parties of the people joining us on Facebook. Leaning into God is leaning to his put around us. Okay, that is great. And I think I'll end soon if there's no more questions coming up. But one of the hardest things when we're struggling is to reach out to somebody and say, I'm struggling. And the way I would suggest you do this is like this. I need some friend time, and I need you just to listen and to carry. I don't want any advice, and I don't want you to help me fix it. Can you just listen? And hopefully you have a friend like that. If not, you can email me and I'll just listen to you. SusieMillerCoaching@gmail.com. Because sometimes we just need to pour out our hearts. We need somebody to hear that we have reality sucks. Other times it might be, and I need your help. Could you help me by? Last night we talked about naming our needs, the needs that we have. And sometimes I had a friend today who just needed to get off the phone. She's like, I can't talk anymore. It's like, okay, I'll talk to you tomorrow. And that was very loving and very much a sense of our friendship being strong, because she said, I need to get off the phone. Can't talk anymore. My husband, the other night we were talking, and we got this news about his mom, and I had this thought in the middle of the day, and he's, literally 15 feet from me all the time in our little tiny house. And I started talking, and he was like, I can't do this now. And he probably said it in that tone of voice because we're both a little stressed today. And I was like, right. Okay, tell me when you can. So again, looking at the people around us, who do we have that we can lean on? And again, we're talking about physical distancing and socially connecting. Hop on a FaceTime call. Ask someone to look at your face. Ask someone to sit with you and cry with you if you need that. If you live alone, we meet with our little, I told you, our couples study, and we've been on the road for 3 years. And after a year, I really miss that community. And at the end, they pray, and it's so funny because one of them will always put their hand up, like to the camera, like because we stand in a circle and hold hands at the end, and they'll do that. And it's this kindness. And so I think remembering, God has put community around us. So thank you for that, Michael. That's a really good reminder. In the midst of all this, we can get through this hard time together. It is just beginning. I don't mean to be a doomsdayer. I'm hoping that these live discussions are helping you guys. And I'm looking into some ideas for next week that might also meet needs, maybe a summit, maybe a live talk show, maybe a weekly video, something that will really help. So if you have specific things that you're like, Susie, please address this, and you don't want to post it in the chat box, or you don't want to DM me, you can email me. Again, Susie Miller. Susie Miller Coaching at gmail.com. I'm a little discombobulated today, friends. Sorry. And we'll go from there, and we'll see what we can do. Tomorrow night, we're going to talk about kid stuff. We're going to talk about, I am not an expert, but I've gathered a bunch of stuff for kids. And that is one thing I'm going to figure out a way to bring some experts on next week about how to deal with kid stuff. And then probably Friday, we'll talk a little bit more about personal care and the ever-present spouse that, or the people, all the together time, unless I get other specific questions from you. So thanks for joining me tonight. Thanks for being here. Please let me know how I can serve you. I can help you in this place, and I will see you tomorrow night. All right, let's stop the recording. Yes. And love you too, Pam. And meeting. There we go.